Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome, councillors. Welcome to the January meeting of the Planning West Committee of Somerset Council. We are not expecting a fire drill today, so if the alarm sounds, please leave the building by the two fire exit doors and gather at the rear of the court car. The meeting is being recorded and will be streamed to YouTube. Can I ask those present that if there are any members of the public present, that you should be aware that they may be recorded, even if you are not participating in the meeting. If that causes you any concerns, then please could you let me know now? Okay, I'm not seeing any concerns raised. In that case, we will move on to our meeting. And the first item on our agenda is apologies. I've had apologies from Councillor Mansell, and I know Councillor Sully is online. So good afternoon, Andy, and thank you, David. Do we have any more?
We have Councillor Wren, who's also online, giving his apologies.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Warm welcome.
Thanks. I couldn't get through the flood, Simon. So
no, I know. I understand. It's lucky for me. I live in the central Taunton, so that's helpful from that point. Okay, so second item is the minutes from our previous meeting on the 16th of December. I wish I signed those as a true record. Norman, can you use your microphone, please?
I have a query, Mr. Chairman. On page 17 of the minutes, just up from the bottom, second paragraph, there is councillors asked whether the financial contribution towards highways could be requested as a condition to view visibility displays or cycleways. Right. If it did not come forward from Lingford Lane, it would be used to improve in that area. If the committee were to support it with more financial aid, it could be used at Cheddon School area to improve the safety on that lane. Was what we talked about at the time.
That was.
Yes. And it was agreed, or it was suggested that that could be put in as a condition.
It was indeed suggested.
And I don't see it in the conditions.
No. Okay. Well, if we can.
So if that was added, because that was the reason why I withdrew my proposal.
I understood that, Norman. So, Jack.
Yeah, members may recall I wasn't actually at the committee, but I understand the application you're talking about is the one off Cheddon Road, isn't it? The application, as you know, we're not the determining body anymore because it's an appeal against non-determination, but it should be put forward as potential condition in the documentation that goes forward as part of our appeal process. And yeah, and absolutely, and we'll make sure it is. But yeah, I'll follow that up for you, Councillor.
And thank you. And with that alteration to the minutes, Norman, are you happy? Okay, thank you. Any other queries on the minutes? No. In that case, can I have a proposer, please, Norman, and a seconder? Thank you, Habib. And I was duly signed then. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. 3 declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, councillors, other than your normal statutory declarations? I'm not seeing any. No. Okay, thank you. Item 4 is public question time. I've not been notified of any. So in that case, we'll move straight on to the meat of our meeting, which is planning application, item number 5 on our agenda, which is a planning application.
Excuse me.
Hello.
Hi, I'm so sorry to bother you. My name is Annie Robinson. I'm Deputy Clerk at Watchet Town Council. Did you just say that you had no notification of any public speaking?
That's what I said.
No public questions.
No public questions. Not no public speaking.
Oh, sorry.
No
so that comes
questions.
later. Thank you. I just wanted to be sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Right. We're moving on to item 5, which is planning application 3/37/25/010 Watchet, and it's flat at 53 to 55 Liddymore Road, Watchet, TA23 ODS, and it's a variation of conditions number 2, approved plans, and 3, remove a window, and 4, to remove access to the flat roof area. and privacy glazing no longer required on that application 34. The, are you presenting this?
Yes, sir.
Yep, so I'm going to turn over now to Zach Elwood, who's going to present on behalf of the officers.
Thank you, Chairman. So yes, brief introduction. So Planning Commission was previously approved for conversion of 2 flats, including an extension to create 3 flats above the co-op that's on Liddy-Moor Road, backing onto Walden Road. This application seeks retrospective permission under Section 73A of the Town and Country Planning Act to seek to regularise the as-built situation. So what was approved under the previous planning application is not identical to what has been implemented on the site. So just a bit of history, the co-op did apply to try and vary the scheme through a non-material amendment under Section 96A of the Town and Country Planning Act, but it was felt that the changes proposed went beyond what we could legitimately consider to be non-material. So they withdrew that application and they've instead submitted this application to vary conditions to retain what the situation is there. Just a reminder to members, I'm sure you'll all be aware from your training, but retrospective planning applications should be considered in exactly the same way as if it was an application that had not already been implemented, and also to say that unauthorised development in itself is not illegal. It can become illegal once enforcement action has been taken and it has been ignored, etc. But no laws have been actually broken in terms of implementing this. But it is unauthorised development, and that's why the co-op is seeking to retrospectively regularise the situation. In terms of the changes, I'll go through these with the plans, but just in summary, there were 2 windows on the side elevations of the extension that had been previously approved at first floor level. These have been removed or not implemented, and now there are 2 windows with obscured secure glazing on the front elevation, and those face towards the rear gardens of properties in Walden Road. The previously proposed access to the flat roof to flat 3 has been omitted, and therefore the applicant has actually deleted from their scheme the privacy screens that were previously proposed and were shown on the plans. Again, I'll come on to the plans in a second, on the basis they believe they're no longer required in this location. And then perhaps more fundamentally, the staircase has been reorientated. So it's an external metal staircase providing access to first floor to access the 3 doors for the 3 separate flats. That's now been turned 90 degrees, and the raised access walkway has been amended as well. It's slightly wider, and the railings differ from what was previously approved. The applicant says the changes were required to comply with the building regulations, but just to remind members that actually the principle of the development, the 3 flats, the fact there will be a metal staircase and a raised walkway, that's albeit with a different orientation, that has already been approved and established. So that's the legitimate fallback position that they could potentially go to. Here's a site location plan. The application property of the co-op is identified in red, and then you can see the pink shaded area. That's sort of the access road to the rear of the property. It comes off Roman Way, providing access to the rear of the property and the flats. And it's a private access road. It's not an adopted highway. I've got some photos in a sec. Here's just an aerial photo showing the same, and you can see the access road where my arrow is pointing. But just for context, I should show you the previously as approved plans. So you can see this small extension was granted at first floor level. Here was the access staircase that run perpendicular to the raised walkway, and provided access to these 3 flats. So you'd get access to flat 1, 2, and then property 3. And the idea being that this actually area of this flat roofed area, which is in existence, and I'll show you photos, would be used as the access to property 3. You can see there's parking shown, 2 parking spaces here, but if you note the walkway itself perpendicular to the raised landing, and you'll see the width of the landing here with the access doors to the individual flats. If I go on to previously approved elevations, you can see these sort of shaded grey areas. Those were the raised balcony screens, so obscure glazed balcony screens that would provide screening, because it does back onto the access road, which again backs onto the rears of Walden Road properties. The idea, because this was going to be an amenity area, like a sitting out area, the idea was that that should be screened to avoid undue overlooking. And you'll see under this application, the stairway itself and the raised railings were going to be replaced with obscure glazed screening. That hasn't been implemented, and I've got some photos of what has been implemented and some suggested conditions. This is the scheme as implemented at first floor plan. So you can see this stairway has been turned by full 90 degrees. So it comes out to just about where it meets the no through road, the feeder road as it's referred to here, but a private access that vehicles can get down. 2 parking spaces still retained in accordance with the previous approval. But you'll notice that the landing, as it were, at first floor is actually wider, and the reason I mention that for a specific reason, because I will be proposing an additional condition at the end of this presentation to add to the ones that are set out in the report. The railings come round so that you no longer drop down onto the flat roof access. The landing curls round in a sort of Z shape here. Oh, sorry, Z shape here to provide access to flat 3. It'll be clearer from the photographs. Sorry. So this is the as-built rear elevation. So you may recall this is the existing flat roof element. Well, it's got a slight what do they call it? It's slightly the dotted line is the floor level, and then it's got a slight raised area around it. But they've deleted the privacy screens, and the reason being is that's no longer going to be used for amenity. You've got the access walkway coming just up to the door and stopping there. It's clearer from the plans. So you come out of your access door, and then you've got the railings blocking you there. You come to the side here, and then you walk down the access and off. Yeah, and the same with flats 1 and 2. They just literally come out onto their walkway and come down the stairs, or when they're coming back up, access the safe landing and then open their doors and go inside. So that's those are the elevations. You can see that we don't have the privacy screens, but you can see the railings quite clearly. This is the view from Roman Way leading into the site. The site's to the right. You can't really see it there. The properties on the left, the cream and yellow and white property, and then another cream, they're all rear elevations of properties on Walden Road, and we have had a number of objections from properties in that area who are concerned about, particularly about overlooking, about noise, about loss of privacy, about access, about ownership rights, etc. It's all set out in the report, so I won't go through those in detail, but would bring those to members' attention. This is looking up and down Roman Way, so the access is effectively on the left-hand photo, and on the right-hand photo. This is just showing the context of the area. It's a residential area. This is a view from towards the site, and you can start to see. You can see the existing ground floor sort of rear projection that would have had the raised balcony, the raised screening around it, and you can see the start of the staircase. Some concerns have been raised about highway safety because of where the bottom of the stairs end. I can only assume that members of the public are concerned because you can get vehicles down here and parking would be there. But it's a no-through road. It's not a, you know, so any vehicle speeds going down there, people will be cognizant that it's a no-through road and would hopefully drive accordingly. So we don't believe that is a major issue. It's not an adopted highway. Here are here's the staircase itself. As they've mentioned before, it would have been going at 90 degrees to, sorry, it would have been turned 90 degrees under the original scheme. They've turned it 90 degrees, so it goes at right angles to the raised landing area, and the raised landing area is slightly wider. And it provides access. Its purpose is to provide access to the 3 flats at first floor level, because they can't go through the shop for obvious reasons. And as I said, I don't want to labour the point, but an access to the rear here with a metal stairway has already been approved. So the principle of that has been established. What we're looking at is the details of this scheme. Just another shot, and you can see where the 2 parking spaces were shown on the plan. So you could get 2 vehicles in there, satisfied with that. I've been to the site myself. Here's another view from the private lane, just showing what would have been the raised, if you see there where the alarm is, that would have been the raised garden area with the screening for flat 3. But now there's a condition, I think it's condition 5 as set out in the agenda report, basically saying that shall be at that flat roofed area shall only be used for access, emergency or maintenance purposes, and shall at no time be used as a amenity area, garden, seated area, that sort of thing. Some concerns, I've added this, I did think about whether or not I needed to add this, but some concerns have been raised about external lighting from local residents, and we did have an enforcement complaint about it. What happened was they put in the lighting before they discharged the condition. There was a condition on the previous permission that required them to submit details of any external lighting before implementing it. So there was a breach there, but the reason for that condition wasn't in terms of a residential amenity, it was to protect bats, albeit we're in a very residential area, so light spillage is fairly likely anyway. But this is on proximity. It turns on and off with proximity. So I inadvertently, when I went onto the walkway the other day, set it off. But I just wanted to show that's the lighting. But it has subsequently been approved, that condition. And whilst residents have said that they're concerned about disturbance to their quality of life through light spillage and light pollution, my own personal view is low level appropriate lighting for an urban area, and it is on a proximity link. It's not on the whole time, so that came on because I stood next to it. You can see the one further on did not come on, and you've got these are the 2 windows either side of the doors. You can see the 2 new windows that were on the side elevations but have now been moved to the front, but they're fitted with obscure glazing, and we don't believe they result in any significant overlooking issues to the properties on Walden Road. But you can see the width of the landing, which in theory could, if the applicants wanted to, without an additional condition, be used to put out a table and chairs. And we are concerned about that because we do have the backs of the Walden Road property. So I will be recommending another condition. I do apologise, it wasn't on the original agenda, but I'll be recommending a further condition to require that area to not be used as an amenity area, or be used for access, obviously emergency and maintenance purposes. But I'll come on to that condition, and hopefully that will allay some fears. Here we're looking back down towards Roman Way. Property, you can just about see the staircase to the left and the properties to Walden Road on the right, and then sort of like a spin round to the properties on Walden Road. So you see they have got reasonably high boundary walls and fences. Having said that, I don't doubt for one moment that when you're stood on the raised balcony, you can look down into the garden areas of those properties, and that's the reason I'm suggesting an additional condition. So in terms of the key considerations for members, as we see it as officers, but you may want to discuss other matters, is that the principle of the 3 flats served by an external metal staircase here has already been established by previous permission. I mentioned that on the basis that some of the concerns are about noise from noise disturbance from people walking up and down metal stairs. But the metal staircase in itself, albeit in a different orientation, has already been approved. So that is we have to look at it in that context. Secondly, officers believe that subject to the imposition of appropriate conditions, the development as implemented, and it's a shame that it was implemented not in accordance with the original plans, but as I say, there's nothing illegal in that. But we believe it would not have a significantly greater impact on the amenities of the occupiers and neighbouring properties, particularly those on Alden Road, compared to the as approved scheme. The scheme complies with the relevant local plan policies, and the recommendation is therefore that we do grant conditional approval, which would effectively regularise the situation. There are 5 conditions as set out in the agenda report, but as I said, the raised access walkway at first floor level is now wider than as previously approved, and could theoretically be provided with seating, chairs, tables. And whilst we've got no indication that that's what they want to do, because of the width of it, there might be a temptation to do that. And that's why I do believe it would be reasonable and necessary to add a further condition, that if committee are minded to grant permission, that we have additional condition, and the suggested wording I have is as set out here, that both the external staircase and the full extent of the raised landing at first floor level, providing access to the 3 flats hereby permitted, shall be used solely for the purposes of access, emergency or maintenance, and shall at no time be used as a garden, balcony, terrace, seating or other similar amenity area. So it's effectively saying you can't just use that as de facto garden or whatever. And the reason for that is to reduce potential overlooking in the interests of the privacy of occupiers of nearby residential properties, in accordance with policy SD1 of the adopted West Somerset local plan. Now, I do acknowledge, the one thing I do acknowledge is that you've obviously got an external staircase and you've got this landing, and there are opportunities when people are particularly walking down the access steps, the external staircase down to exit their property, that you could get views into the garden areas, but these will be fleeting views as you're walking down the steps. It's not the same as a permanent balcony or something where you're sitting out or standing watching, really impacting on residential amenity. And whilst I accept that, that there are concerns from residents and they shouldn't be overlooked, the issue here is whether or not the level of harm caused by someone walking down their steps is in exiting their property is so harmful to their amenity as to warrant refusal, particularly in the context of a very dense sort of urban town centre area where you do have commercial uses and residential mixed together. And quite frankly, I need to mention obviously that the fallback position as the permission has already been granted for 3, albeit with the privacy screens in place. I think given the way it's been reorganised and rearranged at first floor level, the privacy screens as imposed on the previous permission are no longer required, no longer meet the tests of necessity. And on that basis, we are recommending approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now I've got a number of creatures registered. The first one on my list is Gail Waters, please. Ms. Waters? I believe you're online. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, so it's labelled up accounts office, right? That's fine. Good afternoon. When you start speaking, you have 3 minutes. You need to take yourself off mute.
If you're having problems, sometimes it does help to leave the meeting and rejoin, so we can wait for you to do that if you wish. We can't hear you in the room.
Okay,
Should be okay now.
Can you hear us now?
we can hear you now, yes. When you're,
Fantastic.
but that's okay. When you're sitting down and you're comfortable and you start speaking, your 3 minutes will begin. Okay,
Lovely,
so
thank
please
you
make
very
yourself
much.
comfortable first.
Thank you.
No problem.
So that's the camera.
Before I start, I would like you to know that I don't want to be here and I shouldn't be here, but it's because of the intransigence of the planning department and Co-op Radstock, Radstock Co-op, I'm sorry, that we are here. I cannot express how distressed we've been by all this. Radstock Co-op's failure to install the privacy screens has left us and our neighbours exposed, and with the reposition of the metal walkway and staircase turned at 90 degrees, has allowed users to look directly into our kitchens, utility rooms and bedrooms, and that's not acceptable. If you think that the flat roof is not going to be used as an amenity, then I think you're sadly wrong, because I have watched over the number of 3 years with the builders and various people that go up there. They are on that flat roof. They've been sat on the edge of that flat roof. So it's like a red rag to a bull for anybody who wants to have a bit of a party. So the privacy screens are essential, not only for our privacy, but the safety of tenants who Radstock Co-op have as a duty of care to, regardless of whether they are daft enough to be on that roof. The staircase placed at 90 degrees angle has people are looking into our properties deliberately. And the approved plans should have made that clear, that this has invaded our privacy. Sorry, I'm having to move all over the place here into our homes, and deeply upsetting and huge invasion of our privacy. Our sleep has been affected because we are constantly worrying about all this. This has caused us to be sorry, I haven't got my glasses, just place the part with regards to the parking spaces. You have parking spaces for 4 people, 4 cars. That's never going to happen. There's not enough room. And 2 of them have been placed in front of a fire escape, which I believe has to be 9,000 millimeters away from the door. The lights are on all the time. Now, I'm there all the time, and with this weather, the lights are on day and night. Might not be bad in the daytime, but in the evening and night, they are constantly flicking on and off. And the staircase, I have to say, belongs on an industrial estate, not in a residential rural area. And I have seen people standing on these railings and walkways, the railings themselves, which again is another hazard.
You are now
And
over your 3 minutes. Would you please bring your remarks to a close?
That's it.
Okay.
That's all I
thank
have
you.
to say.
Okay, thank you. The next public speaker I've got on this is Carol Page. Is that the lady with you?
Karen Page.
My apologies. It's my colleague's writing. My apologies. When you begin speaking, when you're comfortable and you begin speaking, your 3 minutes will start. Okay.
Okay, I'll start now. This planning application has caused an enormous amount of distress and has resulted in serious and ongoing harm to our residential amenity. It has fundamentally changed our lives, and no one should be allowed to do that. While there are numerous issues associated with the development, excessive lighting, a floating porta cabin, inappropriate CCTV, access to the flat roof, lack of privacy screening, and the completely inaccurate representing of parking provision. The most distressing and harmful element is the devastation caused by the sudden construction of an industrial metal staircase directly behind our homes. The thought of having to look at this staircase every day for the rest of my life is heartbreaking. The steps are ugly, oppressive, utterly alien to the residential area, completely out of character with surroundings and entirely incompatible with nearby homes and gardens. They loom over our property and dominate our outlook, replacing what was once a sense of calm and privacy with a constant visual reminder that our home is no longer a private or safe place. Ugly metal steps are not acceptable when they directly abut residential properties and cause harm to living conditions. The staircase has been positioned at a 90-degree angle to that which it was on the approved plans. As built, it allows people using it to look directly into our bedroom, our kitchen and our garden. The intimate spaces of our home are places where we should feel safe, relaxed and unobserved. Instead, we are now acutely aware that people passing down the stairs can see straight into our living space. Had the staircase been built as approved, this level of overlooking and intrusion would not exist. The deviation is the direct cause of the unacceptable harm we are now living with. Being watched in your own home is deeply unsettling. It impacts on sleep, how you use your home and how you feel on a daily basis. Ordinary activities now come with anxiety and self-consciousness. The enjoyment of our property has been stripped away. The condition of the privacy screens has simply been ignored. They were meant to protect neighbouring residents. Their absence has left us feeling completely exposed and has compounded the sense that our well-being is simply not being considered. The effect of this staircase has been so severe that we now feel our only option is to move, but the presence of such a dominant and unsightly structure directly behind our house would make our property extremely difficult to sell. This leaves us being unable to escape this stressful situation. We feel trapped in our own home. The planning system relies on fairness and consistency. To grant permission retrospectively will send a deeply troubling message that harm to residents can be ignored, conditions can be breached, plans can be altered without approval, and those affected, us, are simply expected to live with the consequences. Have all the public comments and objections on the portal been read and considered by all of the planning committee? Somerset Council local plan policies require development to safeguard the privacy, outlook and enjoyment of existing homes, to avoid unacceptable overlooking, overbearing impact and loss of amenity. These principles are well established in the Somerset Developmental Plan framework and should be applied. The staircase, as built, clearly conflicts with these policies. The harm caused by this development is not minor, temporary or subjective. It is severe, enduring and life-changing, and the application should be refused.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Page. The next individual on my list is Councillor Irvine from the Watchet Town Council. Good afternoon, sir. Your 3 minutes start when you begin speaking, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of Watchet Town Council, who strongly object to the proposal to approve this application. The clerk, who you heard, did actually send a copy of my words today and some additional photos, which we asked to be put before committee today, but that was declined for some reason, so I'll have to waive them at the appropriate point. I'm not going to focus on the written arguments that we and local residents have made about the staircase orientation, privacy, lighting, roof access, and the effect on residents. It's all in the reports pack and you've heard it already. Rather, I wish to focus on your duty of care to protect the interests of local electors, not just developers. The Town Council originally supported enthusiastically the original application you've seen the plans for, where the conditions imposed to protect the privacy and quiet enjoyment of local residential neighbours overlooked by the development by the orientation of the staircase and the privacy screens. The as-built situation, which as you've seen, turned the staircase to the reverse. Now, what I want you guys to do, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, is imagine you are Gail and Karen sitting in your gardens, your bathrooms or your living rooms. I note your officer did not show the photograph from actually the top of the staircase. Imagine I'm standing at the top of that staircase. The original orientation was at 90 degrees. As I walk down, I have no view. Now, as I stand at the top of that staircase, this is the view, taken at twilight. Maybe you can see.
Yes, Mr. Irvine, but you will recall that our clerk informed you when you had to submit them so they could be distributed to everybody on time, you chose to submit them 3 hours after the deadline and a day when somebody was not working, which is why they have not been produced, because we simply did not have the time to get them to each of the individual councillors on time. So I'm sorry if you find that uncomfortable, but that is nevertheless the truth. So
Anyway, you can now see the photograph. At 90 degrees, the original avoids this and demonstrates why the change is a major, not minor impact. And I would suggest it's more for cost and convenience than for building regs in health and safety regions. When enforcement action was requested to meet the existing planning conditions, you indicated it was not an option and tried to rectify the as-built by asking us, the applicant, to submit a non-material variation. When this was found to be illegal, the applicant was advised to withdraw it, just as I was trying to speak to you in August.
Mr. Irvine, I am going to stop you simply because the assertion you've made that my planning officers have done something illegal is incorrect. And I must say to you, you must be very careful, sir, because you are making suggestions that are not supported.
It was
I know you haven't got permission to distribute the photographs. Okay, now, you know, I'm being incredibly lenient and allowing you well over your 3 minutes, and I will allow you to finish, but I would urge you to not make unfounded statements, sir.
Okay. If not illegal, inappropriate process. Whilst asking you to call in the matter for consideration by committee. So I'm pleased that you have determined that the new application is being considered by full committee and not decided by officers who had already decided to approve the changes. You have two clear choices today. One, to approve it, which I believe will set a precedent that all an applicant has to do to get around planning conditions that are imposed at first approval is to build whatever they want and then apply for retrospective approval because you're unlikely to take any enforcement action. Or two, reject the application and enforce the applicant to fulfil the original planning conditions, especially over the staircase. I agree with some of the changes on the amenity. The town council urges you to choose option 2 because in our opinion and the residents, as you heard, it's a major, not minor.
Thank you. Well over your 3 minutes, sir. I think I have been more than reasonable. The last person on my list of public speakers is Polly Reynolds, please. Come to the public desk, and when you're comfortable and you start speaking, your 3 minutes begin. So when you're comfortable and settled.
I'm ready. Chair, members, thank you. I'm Polly Reynolds of Temple Bright, and I'm speaking here on behalf of Co-op, who is the applicant, and in support of the application. Members obviously have heard today a number of concerns, so I will keep my remarks focused on what is actually before you. This is a Section 73 application, Section 73A application to vary conditions 2, 3 and 4 simply to regularise the as-built position. The officer report rightly notes that the application is retrospective, but also reminds you that it's to be determined on planning merits in the same way as any other application. The 3 changes are briefly as follows. First, condition 2, revised drawings simply substitute the approved plans to reflect the development as implemented, which includes the stair arrangement and internal layout. Importantly, there's no increase in overall scale, height or massing beyond the previously approved scheme. Windows. The side elevation is removed and replaced with a front elevation window with obscured and secured glazing. It's a straightforward privacy improvement. It reduces potential for overlooking when compared with the earlier arrangement. Third one, the condition 4 regarding roof access. Access to the flat roof is removed, so it cannot operate as an amenity area. Members are not being asked to rely on assurances here. The recommendation includes an enforceable condition which will restrict the flat roof to repair, maintenance or emergency only, which directly addresses privacy and disturbance concerns. On the issues relating to lighting, the report makes it clear that external lighting is already controlled and approved, and it must remain exactly as approved, and there can be no additional lighting without further planning permission. This is an important safeguard for amenity and also ecology. Other matters such as CCTV are not part of this application, and land ownership and access disputes are also civil matters not to be decided today. In short, the officer assessment is that the changes will not harm the character or visual amenities of this area. They will not materially worsen residential amenity and have no adverse highway implications. You have supporting consultation responses, which includes divisional members' support and the ecologist confirmation that the development can continue. There have also been discussions today of further condition to be imposed potentially, which will hopefully further reassure local residents. It is for those reasons that I respectfully invite members to follow the officer recommendation and to grant planning permission subject to those updated planning conditions.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. It was just a point of clarification relating to the third speaker, Councillor Irvine. So just very clearly, he said that you have two clear choices today. One, to approve and, as he says, set a precedent for the development, albeit we think it's acceptable. But two, to reject the application and enforce the applicant to fulfil the original planning conditions. I don't want to be a boring planner, but that's not what you're here to do. You're here just to determine the planning application. You're not here to determine whether or not matter should be enforced. So even if you refused planning permission, other than the right of appeal, which the applicant would obviously have, it would be a matter to be looked at on the basis of expediency and public interest, whether or not the council would take enforcement action. I'm not trying to denigrate your role, but I just want to clarify, and hopefully our legal advisor will agree with me there.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. Colleagues, questions for the officer? Derek?
I'd like to speak clear. Pretty obvious that the issue here is, in truth, the overlook, and I appreciate there's an issue with the lighting as well. I would have thought that the fact that the flat roof certainly isn't supposed to be, under the proposed condition, used as an amenity space is, if complied with, a positive. However, it's obvious that the balcony and the staircase provide a greater opportunity for overlooking than was the case before. Can I just check, on the original as approved plans, did the privacy screens, yeah, I think that's my answer. So the privacy screens, we look at the bottom image, there's privacy screens on the left on what would have been the amenity space on the flat roof, but there were also privacy screens on the galvanized walkway. And I note from there that the privacy screens appear, given that the walkway is slightly lower there. What was the height of the privacy screens on that walkway? Are they sort of 180 centimetre height, or anybody know that? But I think what I'm getting at is, I know this wouldn't solve the issue with the staircase, but why is it that the privacy screens are not still on the walkway? I'm sorry, I probably should have come with that detail before. I'm not trying to...
Yeah, I understand the point you're making. They're not there on the basis that that's not what's been implemented.
Right.
And in terms of the use of that walkway, because it is purely to gain access, rather than being used as an amenity area, it was felt unnecessary to retain those. So what was as built is obviously minus those.
Yeah.
That's not to say they couldn't provide them if it were deemed necessary and reasonable and met all the tests of conditions. Yeah.
It just occurs to me that I appreciate, of course, that we are here to decide the application before us in the form that it's been proposed. But as I look at the picture that we have, whether we were supposed to or not, now all seen, it's pretty obvious that the staircase is in a direct alignment between the gap between
Two houses.
number 4 and 6 Wooldham Road. And that if there were, for example, privacy screens to a height of approximately 6 feet or thereabouts, or 180 centimetres along the screen, and down the side of the staircase railings, as far as, I suppose, roughly the half landing, then the opportunity for anybody at any stage to look into anybody's back gardens, or certainly into anybody's houses, would be eliminated, apart from fleeting glimpses or people making a deliberate attempt to look over the top. And I would have thought the situation would be significantly improved. And I don't quite see why it is that the applicant wouldn't have recognised that there clearly is a greater opportunity for overlooking on the new built, as built. And it seems to me like such an obviously easy and cheap way to substantially remedy the situation. And it may not be, for example, frosted glass. It could be, willow screen panels, or something like that. It just seems like such a relatively simple solution. I don't quite know why that hasn't been suggested by the applicant. I know. Anyway, there we go. That's my thoughts for the time being.
Okay, thank you. Caroline, followed then by Andy Sully online, please.
Yeah, I pressed two things at the same time. Yeah, I'm with Councillor Perry on this. When you see that photograph, you can tell, just how exposed they must feel in those two houses, especially the two houses either side. So I absolutely do get that. And if it would help them, obviously there's an issue about amenity and it's about their privacy. So this is a planning issue, right? It is a planning issue, how it affects those neighbours. So I would feel a lot more comfortable with this. I mean, the thing itself is minging, isn't it? It's not a thing of beauty. It's just minging. And really, I'd say, no, let's reorient it, make it nicer, yada, yada. But that aside, I think the key issue is that reducing that distress and distress to the other residents of having people will go out and have a fag, won't they? That's what will happen. And they'll stand and they'll look. And that's what will happen. So if we can do something, as Derek suggested, and prevent that and put up some screen and mandate in the conditions, the screening, I think I would be a lot more comfortable.
Okay, Andy Sully.
Thank you, Chair. My comments are very similar to Derek's and to Caroline's. Obviously, they're 2-bed flats. So obviously, two things. One could be people may want to go outside smoking because they don't want to smoke in their properties, and they'll stand there. And if there's husband and wife, say, both smoke, they could be standing outside chatting for 10, 15 minutes, and they'll be standing there looking across to where those properties are, which isn't desirable. And also, if it's a 2-bed, it could potentially at some time people could have children. Now, if children get under your feet, you can say, go outside. So they're gonna go outside onto that platform area, and they're gonna play. And one of the things, it says it shouldn't be used as a garden. But how can you stop young children going outside and making noise? You can't really. You can obviously obstruct them in terms of the visual impact by having the screens. Now, I think the reason why the Co-op have done this is more for a cost, because if you do glass balustrade screening, it's not cheap. It's quite expensive compared to this quite reasonable it's not wrought iron, it's galvanized steel. And by not doing it on that, to me, I think
we need to be careful about supposition.
Yeah, sure. Because I feel it's a backward step, removing the flat roof in terms of amenity area, because if you had it screened off, it wouldn't be so much of a problem. So I'm not too happy with it, but I'd be happy to make a proposal that they should put some sort of type of screening up, like Derek suggested, that cane type of screening, which is quite reasonable in terms of price, to mitigate this sort of problem. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think I'm on the same song sheet as Councillor Perry and Councillor Eddis here, and I think just as that report there, and it seems a shame that it seems to be at a bit of a binary choice here, because again, we might have condition 6 restricting their use of the balcony, but who's going to police that? As they say, it's going to be a sunny day. It's going to be out. So I'm I think it's a shame that the privacy screens have been taken off, and I think they should be. And also, I mean, when I look at the staircase, I mean, I don't have an objection to the staircase going in the direction it is, but a covered staircase would have cut off all the views across the road.
Just a couple of observations. Firstly, if you look at the Z shape for the entrance from the walkway to flat 3, you will see that there is that is a set of railings. There is no access other than climbing over those railings onto the flat roof, which is precluded from being used for any amenity purpose. So somebody's going to have to climb over the barrier to get there. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying it's starting to become really quite difficult, particularly if we consider imposing a condition for a taller screen. So that's one point. We've got to be very careful about supposition. We have been told that the orientation of the staircase was for building regulation purposes rather than for aesthetics. And I happen to agree that I don't think aesthetically it's particularly pleasing, but it is what it is. So that's my comments for the moment. Councillor Hadley wants to come in. You want to come back? Sorry, Nick, you want to come back? My apologies, Andy.
Yes, sorry, I wasn't really referring to about them having access to the flat roof. I mean, we were shown pictures of a very wide walkway, which even during the presentation said people could sit outside on. So I'm thinking about the privacy of
the conditions are enforceable. I mean, the point behind conditions is they're enforceable. So yes, it is a wide area, but it will be precluded. And if we continue in the vein of thought that's being suggested about some screening, additional screening, then that's going to make it less attractive as an amenity area, I would think. As I say, from the flat roof area, that is, they're going to have to climb over a 6 foot. So and the flat roof is precluded from being used for any purposes other than emergencies or maintenance, which I'm okay. Councillor Farber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to find out what was the justification behind changing the staircase from where it was to what it is. And if you can actually have a look at the picture, the current staircases are actually coming onto the grass verge, as I see it. So, you just come downstairs and you go onto the grass verge. It just makes it a little bit. Yeah, there. It doesn't look. It doesn't look very. So basically, when you walk on the grass verge on a wet.
We have just one meeting, please, gentlemen.
Yeah. So on a grass verge on a wet day, go upstairs, slipping on those metal bars, and I just, it doesn't look very sensible and very safe to me. Now, I would have liked to have seen that sort of, the previous 90 degrees. So you come down and I know this is before us when we've got to sort of accept what it is before us, but it just makes more sense to sort of.
Okay, bring the officer at this point.
Okay.
My belief, although I'm not a building regulations officer, so please bear with me, but if you look at the way the original approval is orientated, you'll see you've got a very short length of stair there, which suggests that would be an incredibly steep staircase, because you haven't got the length there that you have where it's done in the 90 degrees. So I imagine that's why it has been turned. I take your point about it not being the most attractive. It's fairly utilitarian, but it is around the back of a commercial property. It's not hugely prominent from public views. If I just go back to, I'm in Roman Way, can't even see it from, effectively can't see it from this position here. What I'm saying, I guess, is we have to look at the fact that has already been approved. we're being told that they couldn't be implemented under the building regulations. I think whilst I don't disagree with Councillor Farbahy that you know, metal stairs can be slippy, that's not really a matter for us as the planning authority could consider, because the existing metal stairs that they've already got approval for could be slippy also. So what we really need to focus in on the changes and whether they're acceptable or not. What we've got is we've got 3 flats that are approved, an extension that was referred to by one of the objectors as a porter cabin, which I think is harsh. I think it actually works reasonably well on top of in its location, in its context. The metal staircase is utilitarian, but a metal staircase was already approved. So what we're really coming down to is this 90-degree angle. I hear some members saying that we should potentially have I'm guessing you're saying an additional condition to require the reinstatement of or provision of privacy screens along the rear. Can I just finish? Along the elevation that directly faces Walden Way.
Where you go from?
Sorry,
Sorry, somebody's not.
What's that much of a detour? Because I.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, I'm hearing that some members, and I appreciate you haven't voted or proposed it or anything yet, but some members are talking about potential for some additional screening. If you felt that met the tests of being reasonable and necessary in conditions, that is within your gift to suggest and vote on an additional condition. As I think Councillor Coles mentioned, it wouldn't avoid those fleeting glimpses as you're walking down the walkway, which is at 90 degrees. But I think it may overcome your concerns about people standing out there having a cigarette or glass of wine or whatever. So it wouldn't be an ideal solution, but it is within your gift if you feel that's necessary. We haven't recommended it because we feel, on balance, having taken it all in, that we could accept what's put before us. But it is within members' gift to propose, second, and vote on that should they wish to.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, it's clear that the issue of overlooking neighbourhood amenity is the crux of this. And I know it has been asserted that because of building control issues, the staircase had to be reorientated. However, we haven't actually seen evidence of that. We've been told it, but we don't know why that has proved to be impossible. Because, of course, had the staircase gone the other way and had it been screened on one side, then all of the issues really that we've just been talking about, particularly if we're able to have some sort of screening on the access balcony area as well, would have been solved. And we wouldn't be where we are now. So there's a bit of me that says I'd really like to see that building control evidence, to be honest. However, if we do have to accept the position that we've got the staircase as it is, and however reluctantly we feel that we have to go along with that, then the maximum amount of screening that we can get to ameliorate the issues with the neighbours is probably just about the least we can do. But I can't say I feel very happy about it. And again, I think that we should be very concerned that we're being put into this position of accepting something that I don't think is desirable and I don't think is as good as the original application. And it's really pretty unsatisfactory, to be honest.
Take all those comments on board. I think what we need to do at this stage is look at what is possible, and whether what is possible and reasonable and measured would be feasible on what we have here as it is actually built. I also would like to get the officers to check the building regs to see whether, what information we've got. We're told it was done for orientation, and looking at it, I suspect, but I suspect only, that it's because it would be very steep. It was perpendicular. But I don't, looking at it, I think if it comes down to the side there, I don't think, I think it would have to be a very steep staircase to fit. So I'm just thinking out loud that that's what I'm looking at and thinking.
Well,
Now, what I'd like us to consider at this stage, because I think it's appropriate, is what we can do to ameliorate it. So can we go back to the photograph of the walkway itself, please? Okay, right. Okay, yeah, that one for the moment, because the you come up the walkway and you've got one flat on one side, or a small walkway, and then you come this way, coming out of that photo to get to flat 3, which is around that slight Z shape on the plan. Yeah. Okay. So if we were to suggest, and I'm going to suggest 1.8 meter screens along that run of railings and round the corner to the entrance to flat 3. Yep. Is that sufficient to ameliorate the problem? Well, is it reasonable to measure it, sensible to look at that? And can we just look at the far end of that, to the right hand side of that photo? Have we got anything that shows that last bit? Right, that's that last bit. We've got the gap in the range where the stairs are. But I'm thinking about that strip of railings at the back there. Okay, and then around the front. So yeah, hang on. Go back. Oh, right. You see the railings come from the edge of the building and across the front of flat 1, presumably, and then you've got the gap for the stairs, and then you've got the rest of the railings, and you've got the flat roof and the Z shape to get around to flat 3. If we made a condition that had 1 meter 80, 1 meter 80 fencing all the way around there, is that going to sufficiently satisfy the committee that is probably the best that we are going to be able to get reasonably, having first established this question of was the staircase reorientated for building regulation reasons, or because somebody, the applicant or their builder, felt it was an easier build?
Chairman, can I just come in on that last one?
Yeah.
I'm not qualified in the building regulations. I don't believe anyone around this table is. We don't have a building regulations officer here. I can't comment on that, other than to say my gut feeling is probably it would have been too steep just in the distance they had. So whether that's the case or not, and whatever their desire, I mean, I don't want to poo-poo anything, but it's almost irrelevant, because we have got before us what is an application for this, and this is what we have to consider. I'm sorry if that sounds a bit blunt, but we do have the staircase orientated in the way it is. So we can't, under considering this application, you can approve it. You could approve it as is. You could approve it with the additional condition I'm recommending. You could approve it with an additional condition about screening, or you could refuse it. You can't approve it subject to them turning the staircase back 90 degrees. I just wanted to be clear on that. That's not within our gift, because that's just a different scheme. So just to be clear on that, in terms of, if you indulge me, I think I like looking at plans because I'm a boring planner, but I just wanted to say that I think this would be easier rather than just looking at a photo. So I think what you're talking about is Councillor Coles, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a 1.8 meter screen of details that would need to be agreed with the applicant. We'd need to get them to submit those within 3 months or something, or 2 months. We'd need to get a screen. Oh, sorry. Can you see my arrow there, members? So I'm saying up here to this point here where the stair opening is, jump over, around here, up to here, and then back to here. Do you need it there, given that that's so much further away? I mean, you could do and back to here. It's up to
Well, I
you.
think it looks slightly incongruous if it wasn't.
Okay.
But that's.
I think that's what you're talking about, though.
That's.
As far as I can tell, that's what was but it wouldn't involve anything on the stairs, and I don't think any screening to either side of the stairs would do anything. I don't think it would serve any purpose, and it would look ugly as well, I think.
I think the problem with the staircase going straight down is that the view is straight down, the sideway. Hang on,
Ugly up.
bear with me a moment. Thanks, on, please.
I just wanted to make a comment with regard to the orientation of the staircase, because the objectors have made comments about being concerned about overlooking because of the change in the orientation. Originally, the scheme that has been approved had the orientation 90 degrees facing the other way, as we've heard. And this application, section 73A, is to change a number of items because what's been built doesn't accord with what was approved. One of those items is the orientation of the staircase. The reason you've been given for the change in the staircase is because of building regs. But what was approved, the staircase was the other way. And the neighbours and Councillor Pugsley are saying that they're concerned with the orientation, present orientation, because they're saying that that gives more chance of overlooking and damage to amenity. Given that the staircase the other way round was approved, I think, and given that the only reason you've been given is building regs, I would say it is possible for you to check if you are most concerned about that, as Councillor Pugsley says he is. It is possible for you to check what the building regs situation is, if that's a great concern to the committee. You could potentially ask the applicant, because you've got a representative of the applicant, you could ask her, see what she has to say. She may or may not be able to answer that. Or you could, if you felt really strongly about it, you could defer. Because if, say, hypothetically, building regs was happy with the orientation as approved, then it's open to you to go to leave it at that, and therefore you could refuse that aspect of this application. So it's not black and white, is it? It's if you're very concerned about the staircase in its current position, you may want to just look into that further. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, can I just come in on a planning matter rather than a legal matter? And thank you to my colleague. But the bottom line here is you have to be able to justify a refusal, because if it's refused, it will go to appeal. I think I can understand where members are coming from in terms of the raised staircase, the raised walkway, about the even with a condition that I'm suggesting, there might be an inclination for someone to go out there with a glass of wine, put a chair out there on a sunny day. I totally get that. Go out there in the evenings, talk, disturb neighbours. I get that, and that could lead to a loss of privacy. The staircase is a means of access. I think it's very unrealistic to think that people are just going to stand on the staircase left, right and centre as an amenity area. It's going to be used as an access to get up there and as an access to get down. So yes, I accept that there are, you've been shown the photographs and you've talked about it and you're rightly raising concerns, but these are fleeting glimpses. This is not significant loss of amenity. People aren't going to just stand in a chain on the stairs looking into the complainant's objectors' properties, are they? So whilst, yes, I totally get what the lawyer's saying to you about what you can do and what you can't do, I think refusing permission, if there was a mitigation to overcome 99% of the overlooking through the screening, I think the fleeting glimpses you get walking down the stairway, I don't fancy our chances at appeal. I can't guarantee that, but I don't fancy our chances at all.
Okay, thank you for that. Now I've got Andy Sully that wants to come in. He's been waiting very patiently, and then we'll go around the table again. Councillor Sully.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. What was I going to say? I was just thinking that an architect who designed it normally would build something to building control, because they obviously know about staircases, landings, ups and downs. So I find it quite hard that an architect will design it knowing what current building regulations are, then the building control person coming in and saying, well, this doesn't meet it. So I'm quite keen to find out the actual specifics on what the lawyer said about how this was turned down by building control. If an architect designed it, you would have thought they would do it to current specs. And another thing is, if we do the screening, hopefully if they do the screening, 1.8 metres, like you suggested, Chair and Derek, don't we then need to take away that condition that you cannot sit outside? Because obviously you wouldn't see anybody if they're behind the screens. So that those conditions that were added, I think, by our planning officer subsequently since doing the written report, he presented it earlier that there was some conditions about not using it as a garden area or an amenity area. So can I have some clarity on that, please? Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. I would point out that we do not know whether this scheme was designed by an architect or not. But anyway, that's by the by. I'm going to start with Andy Hadley, who hasn't actually had a comment yet, and then we'll go around the table again. Probably start with Andy Hadley again.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I believe I don't believe we should take away the proposed condition to allow them to use them as a garden area. I think that would cause more noise pollution for the area than anything else. Whether people will use it as that and whether you can police it is a different matter. But if there is an excessive problem, at least you've got some sort of weapon. Sorry. I think we should put screening round. I don't like the idea of bamboo screening. Give that a storm like we had last night, and it'll be all over the floor. So I think it should be permanent screening that's there for the purpose, whether it be frosted glass or what have you. But you put willow around there, you get bad weather over a couple of years. There'll be no screening left, and nobody will pay to put it back. So you'll go back to square one. So if you work with a permanent screening that is made for the job, I think you've got more chance of it happening. And I would actually like to see the screening down to that first landing, because I believe that would stop, as they're regressing out of the flats and coming down the stairs, that's where the most overlooking is going to happen. Once you're on the stairs in the second landing, you'll come straight down to wherever you're going. So I think that would help to mitigate that problem.
Thank you for your contribution. I'm going to go around the table again now. I'm going to start with Councillor Parbhai, then Councillor Ellis, then Councillor Pugsley, then Councillor Perry, and then work my way down the other side.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm quite happy to second your proposal. And whilst we're looking at that, would it be possible to have a look at the staircase and sort of give it a paint of white colour that actually can look that, you know, the place that actually is more of the same? Can we actually put some sort of condition on that, or is that not possible?
On that?
I don't think that'd be reasonable, given that a metal staircase and galvanised steel has already been approved in that location. I don't think that would be meet the tests of.
Okay, Caroline.
Put it this way, I'm not going to vote for it unless we have the extra thing about the privacy screening. It needs to go all the way around, and if we can go down to the first landing, as Councillor Hadley said, then I think we're making the best of a rotten job, aren't we? I mean, I don't do this with any glee, but I just think, you know, it's the best we can do to alleviate some of the distress that the people across the road are going to be experiencing, isn't it? It's a practical response.
Well, this business about the lower landing, Mr. Chairman, if it was a straight flight, I suspect you wouldn't pause on it, because the landing is there. That's exactly the point that you get to and pause. And if we've got screening around the top, I suspect there might be a tendency to go down to the landing and stand there and take in the view. So at the very least, if we are going to allow the staircase to stay in that orientation, I'm uncomfortable. But if we do, any screening, I think, ought to go down at least to that lower landing level.
Just how we sort of wrap this up, I think I'm with Caroline in the sense that as it is, as proposed, I'm quite satisfied that there is an unacceptable risk of overlooking and loss of visual amenity. The truth is that we are trying to resolve the detail around what we think is an acceptable level of screening within the meeting. Would it be appropriate? But I do also agree with Andy that the condition for non-amenity use of the walkway should remain for the reasons he explained. Would there be any difficulty from a practical or procedural point of view for us proposing that the application be allowed subject to the non-amenity condition and subject to screening to a metre of 1.8 metres to a height down to the half landing, but to delegate to officers the ability to sort of discuss, exactly where, and if it can't be agreed with the applicant, then it comes back. But I think we all know what we're looking at. I mean, for example, I query whether, in fact, on the landing, whether the end piece to the right as we look, which faces north, whether actually you need a screen there, because I'm not sure that does give an opportunity for overlooking, and that might let some light into the balcony. But I don't actually know, because I was tempted to propose you don't need a screen there. But for all I know, if you were to go out there and lean over the side with a cup of coffee or a fag, you might have a view into somebody's garden. So I'm not going to go suggesting that that's not necessary from the comfort of this chair.
Okay. Well, from the comfort of this chair, I'm going to ask the applicant's agent whether they have a view on the orientation of the staircase, or whether or not this is looking likely to satisfy all parties. I appreciate you might not be able to tell me, but I do feel I ought to give you the opportunity to respond.
So I think the issue is, was the orientation changed because of building regs control saying the other wasn't acceptable? That is what I've understood always to be the case. That is the position that was advised back in the summer. There was no appetite to change the orientation. They had no choice simply through building control. I don't have the papers to demonstrate that that was the position that I can present and show you, but I can assure you that the co-op wouldn't have changed and wanted to change the approved drawings unless they had no choice other than to do so.
Okay, thank you. Just bring Zach in.
Again, please bear with me that I'm not a building regulations officer, but my colleague Gemma has very kindly looked up building regulations rating at external staircases serving residential properties. Whilst it won't answer the question, because I'm not here to do my Pythagoras bit with maths, but effectively the building regulations say that the maximum pitch is 42 degrees. And I rather believe, that in that short span that you have with the orientation that was approved, you wouldn't be able to achieve 42. I think it would be steeper than that. And so that does
Okay, please do.
Right. Well, I don't think you can without the measurements.
Seriously.
So how can you do that without the measurements of the staircase?
Really, really important question. Right, hang on. No, I'm not doing, I think that's about, I'm not doing that. Sorry. That's, no, please.
But I don't think you'd be able to calculate it without knowing the exact dimensions. No disrespect to Nick.
Okay, we're back. We're actually back round to you, Nick. So if you want to make a comment, now is your opportunity.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy with the screening. I would like to see the screening. I still advocate that a bit of a roof cover over the steps leading down to the first level would even prevent any, I think, viewing into the gardens, even down to the first level, provided protection from the weather when they're coming down. But yes, I'm very much would much rather see some additional screening.
Councillor Hadley. Further comments?
Other than what I've already said, Chair, I believe we should screen down to the first landing.
Mr. Carroll?
Only to say that in town there's an awful lot of undeveloped accommodation available over shops, and we ought to have a better standard of what we can do with verandas and staircases like this, because we could put it around the towns and provide an awful lot of places that wouldn't be needed on green fields.
I wouldn't argue. at all.
Yeah.
Okay,
But otherwise, I agree with the way we're going.
okay, thank you. Is it,
In that case, I'll propose then
Yeah,
that the application be granted, subject to the addition of, firstly, the condition,
as
the
per-
wording of which the DAC gave us earlier in relation to non-amenity
that was
use
number
of
six,
the
that was
landing,
Condition 6.
6, but with the addition of a condition 7.
Yeah.
That on the external balcony areas and down to the height, at least
Entry.
to and including the half landing on the staircase, that there be some form of visual screening to a height of at least 1.8 meters. The detail of which to be agreed with officers, and that screening must be now and forevermore maintained such that it isn't possible to see through it.
Yeah. Are you content, are you content that the final wording of that and the final agreement on that is between the officers and the chair?
Very.
Yeah. I thought you might be somehow. Okay, so am I seeing a second of Norman?
Just a slight query, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
What councillor has just said, councillor Perry has just said, is we want to make it permanent or in perpetuity. How are we going to word that?
Well, it's simply the case, isn't it? But the reason behind it is that actually,
Maintained at
if
all
the
times.
applicant says, well, if, for example, they say we want to put something up which is of natural construction, for example, willow, rather than, full on galvanized frame and glass paneling, we want to be in a position where if it did blow down, then planning enforcement can say, you got to put it back up again. Or if a hole blows in it, you've got to fill it in or replace it.
Through you, Chair, we would use wording along the lines of in perpetuity. So, it would be a requirement to be retained.
Opaque.
So, I'm very grateful for the proposer in that we'll need to agree the detailed wording of that condition. It's not something I'll come up with straight away here, but I'm happy to do that and send it through to Councillor Coles.
I'm just being asked by the legal officer whether I'm proposing that we leave off the end of the balcony. The wording I gave relates to all of it, but obviously subject to the detail. For the record, it doesn't going to go into the recommendation, I don't think, but just so it's on the record, I am, for example, if everybody else is open-minded about the northern end of the balcony, if in fact it doesn't create a risk of overlooking, but obviously when the officers go and look at it.
Sorry, Chairman, sorry to be
Yeah,
awkward.
please,
I would
no,
prefer,
don't
I would
be
much
very
prefer
right on.
clarity from members what they want. I think personally,
All of it.
I would have it. Yeah,
Okay.
I would do.
Fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
fine.
because I can't hand on heart tell
No,
you what's
okay.
next door.
That's fine. And I suppose the fallback
It might change in the future.
and the fallback position is, I suppose, that if the applicant thinks it's utterly outrageous, they have to make a fresh application to change it later on, don't they?
Yeah.
Fine. There we go.
So are we content then? So it's been proposed by Councillor Perry and seconded by Councillor Ellis that we have 7 conditions, the 6 that were, the 5 that were on the paper, the 6th one which was proposed by Zach, and the 7th one as proposed by Councillor Perry. So can I see those in favour, please? Ladies and gentlemen? Right, that's unanimous. It's unanimous. But sorry,
Yes, yes.
yeah. They can't vote. Okay. Right, I'm going to call a 5-minute recess. And we'll be back in 5 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your indulgence. We now move on to agenda item 6, which is application reference number 3/21/25/066. Is for full planning permission. Change of use of disused redundant toilets and office space into amusement arcade and ancillary storage. Amended scheme to 3/21/25/018. The site address is the Arcade, Warren Road, Minehead, TA 24 5BG. And I believe Gemma, good afternoon, welcome to the committee, and we'd love to see your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. This application is for the change of use of disused redundant toilets and office space into additional floor space for the amusement arcade and ancillary storage at the Arcade, Minehead. This application is coming before Planning Committee because the applicant is a divisional member of Somerset Council, Councillor Cravis. Accordingly, under the terms of the Council's constitution, the head of planning does not benefit from delegated authority to determine such planning applications. The Arcade is located to the south of Warren Road in Minehead along the seafront. It is an established amusement arcade located in an area of mixed use and tourism related units. The site lies within Minehead Conservation Area and with flood zones 2 and 3. The existing property has 3 main elements: the main floor area, split level offices, and a lower ground floor area that serves as an ancillary space such as staff areas, offices and storage. The property sits on a level with the seafront on ground level at the front. Due to the slight sloping nature of the land, the lower ground floor level is also at the same level as the railway building behind. The public toilets have closed since 2017. They were then under licence of the Arcade, but have since been closed and boarded up since March 2022. The area for conversion is located to the rear of the building. The proposal seeks to change the use of the toilets and office space into an extension to the existing amusement arcade floor area and ancillary storage. This will be done by levelling the floor of the ladies' toilets to create increased ground floor area and the conversion of the gents' toilets into ancillary storage, which will connect to the existing lower ground floor storage area. This picture shows the existing amusement arcade on the right and the steps to the disused toilets towards the far right of the picture. Just where I'll put my mouse, just there. We've got white render and the steps going down. This photograph shows the site looking south towards the rear of the building. And these 2 further photographs show the exterior of the site with the closed toilets. These are now empty and in a derelict state. These plans show the existing elevations. The only alteration externally would be visible on the one side elevation. As can be seen on the proposed elevations plan, the alterations would include removing the 2 doorways and replacing with 1 fire door. All materials would match the existing building. The majority of the alterations would be internal. This is the proposed floor plan. The ground floor would be built up from the former female toilets to extend the floor area of the amusement arcade. The lower ground floor area would be converted from the former male toilets to be used as a storage area. Reviewing the key considerations, considering the principle of development, the site lies within an area of mixed use and policy, encouraging tourism and employment opportunities within Minehead. The proposal seeks to expand an existing business, providing employment opportunities and continue to support towards a tourism provision within Minehead along the seafront. It will bring an area that is currently unused, boarded up and has been left to become derelict back into use. Heritage impact. The site lies within the conservation area. However, it is considered that the proposals will provide a betterment in terms of impact upon the visual amenity of the immediate area and would seek to preserve and enhance the appearance of the conservation area. To ensure all the materials are suitable, a condition to ensure bricks match the existing will be applied. Flood risk. The site is located within flood zones 2 and 3. As the proposal is for a change of use in accordance with the Environment Agency standing device, there is no requirement for a sequential test. An FRA was submitted with the application. The use on the lower ground floor is to be storage and therefore considered to be less vulnerable. Some of the lower ground floor area will be raised to the ground floor to provide the extension to the amusement arcade, and therefore there will be a reduction in floor area at lower ground floor. All of the proposal is considered to be less vulnerable. The FRA details flood mitigation measures which will ensure that there is no flooding by surface water and will ensure that all materials are robust and water resilient, and that all internal electrical devices installed at a minimum of 1.2 metres above finished floor level. In regards to highway safety, the proposal is a small extension to an existing amusement arcade. It is not considered to give rise to an increase in vehicle trips. In addition, there are a number of car parks locally, which will ensure that no severe impacts upon the highway safety through inconsiderate parking. There have been no objections raised by technical consultees and no public comments received to this application. The proposal complies with planning policy and will bring an area currently in disrepair back into use and provide a betterment for the area. Offer recommendation remains as detailed within the committee report to grant planning permission subject to a completed section 106 to not implement the planning permission previously granted in error on the 20th of November 2025 and the relevant conditions detailed in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Gemma. Okay, now I've only got one public speaker on that, and that's the applicant, Councillor Cradis, if you'd like to come to the microphone. And when you're settled and comfortable and begin speaking, your 3 minutes begin.
Wait for the clock to start. Thank you, Chair. Apologies I have to come and speak to you again with another application, but from experience, I think it's always best to turn up from things that, from having maybe, from experience, I thought it's best I turn up. Anyway, thank you for allowing me to speak. As has been mentioned, I'm here as a member of the public and not the division councillor, although that's not a division councillor. I thought I'd have to explain more the actual how it all going to work because it is a bit confusing, but actually the office has done a really good job of explaining it. I'm sure you've all read the planning statement. As it happens, I hadn't read it since I wrote it in March, but the only thing I would say is the toilets haven't actually been used since 2020. It was in 2022 they were basically stripped of all their interior and boarded up and closed up and have remained that way ever since. The proposal brings back dead space into productive use. The former ladies' toilets become additional ground floor space, as the officer said. It's been mentioned about the conservation area, and although the building is a conservation area, I mean, I always remember the conservation area used to actually go around it, but there are no heritage impacts at all, and the officers confirm this. This is a 1979 steel-framed commercial block, more akin to something in an industrial estate than a vibrant seafront. And despite my best efforts over the years to try and improve it, and I'm still continuing to, it remains what it is. So the idea of heritage considerations even giving rise to this application would seem to a layperson a little odd, but the key point is simple. There's no harm and the officer is satisfied. I do, however, want to briefly touch on the Town Council's position, as in the original application, which has been well publicised, as far as raised Newcastle, because it was very prominently featured in the trade press. They originally offered no objection to Town Council, but later revised this to a no comment for this application, for the reasons being I do not know. I sit on the Town Council's planning committee myself and still have no idea quite why they did this. But, and I say this as affection, but also concern, is parish and town councils are consultees, and often their views are taken into account, and there is obviously the temptation for them to maybe give more weighted stronger than maybe other consultations. But what I would say is that they do this with not even a requirement for basic planning training before making any formal representations. I know recently that the Exmoor National Park actually got all the parish councils together to give them some training. And in my view, compulsory training funded out of their own precept would improve the quality and consistency of local input from town and parish councils. Just very briefly, because I see I'm running out of time, looking ahead, what this application couldn't really explain was once it's completed, it will also enable in the future the former disabled toilets that do not form part of this application to be brought back into use with an internal entrance from the arcade. I've started self-finish. That would allow us better facilities for our customers, and this obviously is dependent on funding, but the works proposed today make that future improvement possible. I ask you to pass the application.
Thank you very much. Okay, colleagues. Councillor Hadley. First among equals.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Chair. First of all, I am the divisional councillor for Minehead, or one of them anyway, so I just thought I'd make that clear. Couple of points. My inbox is always full of emails, especially during the summer months, about public toilets or the lack of. So I am pretty sure that if you were to ask members of the public or many of the tourists that come to town, they would much rather that these stayed as public toilets because they're much needed. However, they have been closed for a very long time. They're no longer functioning. And in my opinion, it is only my opinion, the steps that you have to go down to get to them are just not safe. So some work would have to be done. And also, they're no longer in the council's possession. We no longer own them. So it's down to the private owner whether he opens them or not. We have no control over that whatsoever. So when I look at the ins and outs of this, I can't see any reason why he shouldn't have the change of use that he's asked for, other than leaving them as an empty storage space with no use at all. So it's not nice to see them missing because it is a lot of public toilets for our town and we do need them desperately. So it is it's a double-edged sword, I must admit. But that's the way I feel about that one at the moment.
Colleagues, any, Mr. Buckley, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would thank the applicant for his encomium to the National Park for having undertaken planning training for its parishes. But notwithstanding, in my view, there is no real ground for us withholding planning permission in this case. This authority has now been seen to have done the right thing in making sure that the application did come before this committee. But now we've gone through that process, I will propose that we grant planning permission for this application.
Councillor Pugsley, we of course need a second of that, Norman.
Quite happy to second it, Mr. Chairman.
The proposal has been proposed and seconded that we grant permission. Can I see those in favour, please? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Right, Zach, it's back to you for item 7, which is of course appeals. Mixed bag as per usual.
Thank you, Chair. 5 appeals decisions this time. Don't worry, the first ones was allowed, but the other 4 were dismissed. So I know Councillor Coles is fiercely proud of his standing and his history with planning appeals. So we haven't done you too bad this time. The first one is probably the most interesting and a little bit surprising, I guess. It was for the erection of a dwelling under a permission in principle. So it didn't have full details, but this was out at Hollybank, 5 Bells, Willerton. So it's in a group of houses, but that's not a defined settlement. It's not a clarification. Yeah, it's a little group of dwellings. The inspector went on to identify conflict with a number of local plan policies in terms of sustainability, in terms of its location, the fact you would be reliant on a private car, the fact that it didn't have good pedestrian safe access along the road if you were to walk along there. And, you know, you're reading that, you'd think, okay, this is going to be dismissed.
Go along
but
with the original decision.
But then you suddenly get the weighting, which is against our 5-year housing land supply, which obviously is quoted there at 3.73 years. So we don't have a 5-year land supply. And obviously what's called the tilted balance is engaged. So great weight is attached to that. The only thing I'd say is from my experience here and elsewhere, normally where you get a single dwelling where local harms are identified, it's quite rare for the inspector to say that the weight to be attached to the provision of just one dwelling is not outweighed by the harms. If it was a group of houses or, you know, a housing development, that's more common because obviously it makes a very meaningful contribution. In this instance, you know, I don't think there's any grounds to challenge it, but the inspector, having gone through that exercise, seems to have concluded that because of our 5-year land supply, even one dwelling means that that should be allowed, which is a bit surprising, you know.
Yeah, on that question of the 5-year housing supply, I do find it difficult sometimes, particularly when the government has just changed our requirement and increased it by however many thousand homes a year it is, which means that, you know, the 5-year housing supply is way in the distance now because they've just changed the numbers. It's 14,000 extra homes within a few years. So it's I do find that one difficult to reconcile myself to sometimes.
But and as I say, from my previous experience of authorities that also didn't have a 5-year land supply, we normally worked on the basis that if there were genuine harms that we'd identified, that more often than not we would win an appeal if it's only for one dwelling. But maybe times have changed. I don't know. I mean, it's one appeal decision at the end of the day. But one to note anyway. We were a little surprised to lose that, but yeah, we are where we are. The next one is at Woodhams Farm Buildings, Greenham Road in Wellington. This is a Class Q prior approval, which, as you may know, is change of use from an agricultural building to residential use. This was refused on the grounds that officers felt that the works to bring it into residential use went beyond pure conversion and went into almost like rebuild elements. And on that basis, it didn't meet the criteria to be what's called permitted development. The inspector agreed with us and felt that the previous alterations to the building went far beyond, and what was proposed as building operations went beyond what would be reasonably necessary to say I've converted a building, as opposed to used a bit of a building to build a new one. And there are nuances there, and it's not. There's no slam dunk there, but there is guidance. But I'm pleased to say the inspector agreed with us that.
Can I ask a question about that one, please?
Yes, please do, Andy.
Yeah, thank you. On Q status, I've seen it before where someone's got planning permission on Q status to convert something, and then afterwards they've gone for betterment in terms of to do a better development than the Q status, and they've actually got it. So there's one, for example, within the area where it was like glass houses to convert it into a residential dwelling, which you think that's crazy how you could ever convert glass houses into a residential development. So they got it on Q status, then afterwards put in another application for betterment, and we gave it to them, so they're going to knock it down completely and put quite a big modern development on the site. So how does that stack up when you can actually go for betterment after you've got your Q status? Just want to so I don't know if you can give me a simple answer to that, please. Thank you.
Very, very simply, yeah. I shouldn't really say this because it's a personal view rather than anything else, but it's a source of huge frustration for me that in my own personal view, and it's not the view of Somerset Council, think that sometimes the system is played to that effect, you know, where people will find a big group of barns and think, okay, we can get permission for a queue, but they've got no intention of ever doing it, and they rely on what's called the fallback position. The one thing about the fallback position that we need to be clear, and you've mentioned the word betterment, but with a fallback position, firstly, the fallback position has to be a genuine likelihood if you don't grant permission for this alternative scheme. And the rule is that the fallback position, i.e. if they were to convert the glass house or whatever, would be worse in planning terms. It would be bigger, more ugly, more impact on neighbours than what's proposed. It was a sort of established that fallback position can be a material consideration in case law, but it is being used. We try to. I mean, I've got one at the moment. I won't mention where it is because it's not appropriate. But we've got one where there's a single-storey building that's got the Class Q approval to be converted, and now they're proposing a 2-storey property, which would be more well, in our minds, would be more prominent, and they're arguing betterment. Well, in our opinion, that wouldn't be betterment because it would have a greater impact on the character of the area. But we do try and pick this up, but it is a bit of a minefield and not something I welcome.
Yeah, in the past, we have given permission to ones that it's like a piggery, and they got permission to convert it. They actually got permission to convert it into residential. Then they had more family and what have you, and they wanted to go up. And the planning officers said, no, you can't, because if we did it originally, you wouldn't give you permission. The neighbours didn't object, the parish council didn't object, just the council. And actually, when it came to planning committee, we agreed with the applicant, not the officers, because the officers said you couldn't make the extension subservient to it because it's going up. Because obviously subservient is normally when you do side extensions or back or whatever. And they actually got permission from the planning committee, and that was to go up from like a piggery style bungalow barn conversion. So it can happen.
But each application on its individual
That's
merits,
right. Yeah.
I mean, I feel more sympathy with inspectors and others if the government puts some more pressure on the development trade, because we've got, 1.6 million outstanding planning permissions ready to go. If they actually started building some of those out, we wouldn't have the housing issues we've got, and we would have a 5-year housing supply. So, it's I think there's the development companies do have a case to answer sitting on 1.6 million active planning permissions.
I mean, if through you, Chair, Councillor Sully, that it's interesting that even in the appeal decision, the inspector says my attention has been drawn to a differing prior approval application relating to a nearby building. So where we are generous, if you like, or or we do grant consent approval, often that's used against us for other sites, so we have to be a bit careful. But I couldn't say it any better than Councillor Coles has. Each application on its own merits. In this instance, we felt that the works they were doing weren't conversion; they was rebuild, and went beyond conversion, and it was refused, even though the inspector gave some weight to the fact that could provide a family, potentially a small family dwelling. The next one is 2 holiday chalets in Cleve Park, Chapel Cleve in Minehead. This is in outline, so we didn't even have details of the holiday chalets, but the main issues related to location and the effect on protected species. In terms of the protected species, reptiles in this instance, the inspector didn't agree with us and felt that it wasn't in itself a reason to refuse, but he or she did agree that the site would not be a suitable location, given that it would be very much reliant on private car for access, and was not a sustainable location for a holiday let. Very long track, apparently. I don't know the case myself, but yeah, the inspector felt that it would conflict with the development plan, and that that although there were modest chalets in the area, that's not a reason to allow more, because that's creating more and more trips effectively. 2 more, sorry. Washbottle Mill Cottage in Hewish Champfleur in Wiveliscombe. This was for ground first for extensions to a property. The issues were around the living conditions, around outlook and light, and the character on the appearance of the appeal dwelling and surrounding area. And I think this is where perhaps our appeal decisions sometimes fall down, because this is clearly not our appeal decisions, but the way we present them, because it's clearly a decision which has been taken on the character of the building. And I'm really sorry I can't describe it or show you. It would be ideally would be showing you images, but maybe that's something where to bear in mind for future, but I'm conscious of time. Anyway, the inspector felt that the living conditions of occupiers at Washbottle would be acceptable. There would be a harmful impact on the character and appearance of the appeal dwelling, and therefore a conflict with the development plan, and so we won that appeal. And so that's good, because as you know, we've got our design principles, design and placemaking principles, and we put them in every report, and we do try and encourage good design wherever possible. The next one, I must admit.
Could I ask another question, if I may, Chair?
Yeah, go on.
About the use of a car. Now, this thing always, they say, you know, it's not sustainable because of use of a car. Now, if someone's going to have an electric car and electric, you know, grid hook up to charge it, does that not make it more acceptable if it's an electric car? Because I assume it's to do with pollution, is it? To do with, you know, diesel or petrol. So looking at something sustainable, would electric, if someone said that we're going to have an electric car, would that satisfy, or is that still a no-no? They just don't want any cars on the road? How does it work?
Well,
thank you.
Well, I'm a supporter of electric cars, but there will be people out there that says that the amount of energy that goes into producing the batteries themselves has an impact on the environment. But let's not go there. Let's not go there. But I think the bottom line is you couldn't condition that someone could only have a particular type of car. You couldn't condition that someone needs to have an electric car. It wouldn't even be reasonable to enter into a legal agreement on that. So I understand what you're saying, and it may be that in the future this becomes less of an issue if, as we all make the move, and we have cleaner energy, cleaner engines, and the impact on climate change is reduced. But you know, we do try and encourage sustainable locations for development. That's what part of what our whole development plans are built around. So yeah. I say I wasn't giving a view either there on electric cars. I'm a big fan, but anyway. Then the last one, and I shouldn't really say this, but I will. But when this was refused, this application, I got, this is at Norwich Close in Taunton. Basically, it's for a big annex on a very open corner. So I don't know if you know this part of Taunton, Norwich Close, but there's big open green swards on corners, and it was designed like that. The estate was designed with these open areas. There are some that have been fenced in, but it's a nice open bit of grassland. And the chap, you know, bought the land, fine, but he then proposed a massive annex, which is almost as big as the bungalow and as tall as it, right on that greensward in a very prominent location. And the only reason I mention that is because when refusal came through, as area managers I often do, I get complaints. People, you know, it's not just people complaining about things that have been permitted. I get complaints from agents, so I have double joy there. And the agent wrote to me and said how disgraceful it was and how he was going to appeal, and you know, we'd be laughing on the other side of our face. But I'm laughing on this side of the face because the inspector dismissed it in one page, basically saying that it was going to be really visually prominent and ugly. So I'm pleased that our decision was supported there, because had it not been supported, I think that would have been a really worrying comment, given that the government's trying to encourage good design. So sorry for being a bit unprofessional there and a bit smug. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hadley. But yeah, it was the right decision. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. That's
Okay.
it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. So I'd like to thank you all. I'll see you all on the 24th, and it's a morning and afternoon show on the 24th of Feb. We've got a full day. We've got 5 major applications, possibly 6. So 3 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon.
It's
Don't tell
4 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, we think.